Welcome to Liberty Ukraine. I'm Tetiana, and today our guest is Denis Yelisevich, a businessman and political blogger. Welcome, Denis.
Hello, Tetiana and viewers.
I encourage all our viewers to subscribe to the Liberty Ukraine channel, like this video, and also share it with your friends. Leave comments, share your thoughts, and subscribe to Denis's channel. A major current issue in Pokrovsk is being intensely discussed by the military and others. The situation is as follows. Zelensky says that there is no extremely difficult situation there. That is, there is no encirclement or trap, but the situation is difficult. The capture of Pokrovsk itself is very important for the Russians. There is information that on social media, a representative of a German newspaper, a journalist, writes the following: Russian occupation forces have captured about 85% of Pokrovsk, and there are no signs that the Ukrainians are launching a counteroffensive, nor is there anything showing the battles taking place there, or that Ukrainian flags are being placed anywhere. Therefore, we might come across the idea that something is not going the way we see it in the official media. What do you think about Pokrovsk?
As you know, I've never taken a position and have stressed I'm not a military expert, so I'll only comment on what I know. Politically as well, from what I know, I spoke with several military personnel and specifically asked about this. I won't convey the content word for word. Things are bad, that's the first thing. Second, as always, the authorities are lying. Chersky, of course, the general staff is lying because that's just how it is here. It just doesn't work any other way for us. Do you know what I'm worried about? I'm worried that as few of our soldiers as possible will die, because I remember the Donetsk airport very well. They invented a myth about the cyborgs, but our real people suffered and died. I didn't need cyborgs, I needed living Ukrainians. And I hope that Putin doesn't annex anything, but for Putin not to annex anything, that's politics, not war. That's the story. It shouldn't have happened. And if this situation keeps getting worse, we need to think 24/7 about how to stop it as soon as possible. You see, if we lose Pokrovsk, as they say, what happens next? What will Donetsk say? They'll say, well, it's all because of the Dodgers. Oh, they're already starting to say this. Pokrovsk was lost because of the Dodgers. If the Dodgers hadn't dodged, we wouldn't have lost Pokrovsk. If the Dodgers hadn't dodged, the military enlistment office wouldn't have acted so lawlessly. They'll blame the civilian population, not the military. The military isn't at fault. They're just following orders.
But what kind of
orders from the commander? We could discuss that, but not today. So, to sum it up, nothing good is going on there, nothing good at all. Right now, we're discussing this, and your questions, like others, are all framed negatively. We're not talking about Ukraine advancing or reclaiming territory, but focusing on the negative aspects. This confirms that with each passing month, the situation will get worse and worse. We'll be discussing new settlements. Let me give you a simple example right now. Today, there was another court hearing for my mom, and he faced criminal charges for reposting content. It's just my stream once. This has been going on for exactly a year now, exactly a year. And then the prosecutor stands up and reads out my stream with Hennady Balashov. What were we talking about? They're accusing us of justifying Russian aggression, but we were discussing NATO, the European Union, and criticizing property rights. 100%. And what am I getting at? Two settlements were discussed there. I can't remember which ones now, where we talked about the fact that we would probably lose them soon. And that's in the case. But if you look at the facts from December 9th of last year, we lost the settlements that we discussed with Balashov. Do you understand? So what am I getting at? We're discussing this now. And of course, the authorities don't like what I'm saying. But we should keep quiet. That's what they want. But what happens when we lose them? That's the real question. We need to think about how to end the war as soon as possible.
I would like to clarify, you say that now we see deception or lies from the media because we have no other way, but why is that? I'm curious, why can't it be different? How can we overcome this? Because if it happens that Pokrovsk is captured or something happens to the soldiers, for example, if they are taken prisoner or killed, it's not like a needle in a haystack that we can hide. It will be obvious, people will find out. We may need to escape this situation from even worse positions than now, or maybe I don't fully understand.
Well, I hope they organize a withdrawal so that as few soldiers as possible die, so that the Kursk story doesn't repeat itself. And what happened there, I know, but it will become public knowledge later. And definitely not from me, because that's not my area, exposing things and so on. Why do they lie? Because it's all the Soviet school. And as you understand, you can't be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine if you're not under the control of the authorities. So Zaluzhny had a conflict with the authorities. Although he's not much better than Zelensky, he had a conflict with the authorities. He's no longer the head of the armed forces of Ukraine. Syrsky will follow all the orders he's given. They joined the clearly doomed Kursk operation for rank, epaulets, and likely for something green. Yeah, probably that too. Not valuing people, yes. Being butchers, yes. Lying to the people, yes. That's all the Soviet school, you see. It's a big Soviet system fighting a small Soviet system. The big Soviet system is Russia, attacking the small Soviet system, Ukraine. I'm fighting for us to leave the Soviet system and join Western civilization, where human life is the priority, and not like it is now, where it means nothing. Subtitles?
Zelensky visits Pokrovsk. We know that Budanov was sent there to lead the operation. Milovanov says Zelensky has been suffering and losing sleep for 4 years. He doesn't let the world forget about us. He doesn't give up. He flies all over the world, talks to every leader, to every journalist, trying to do everything possible, so to speak, because he doesn't let the world turn away from us. What do you think? Why was Budanov sent to Pokrovsk? Was it his personal decision? If the situation in Pokrovsk turns out badly, how will it affect Budanov's political career? I mean, will it be for better or for worse? Could you comment on Zelensky not sleeping like the rest of the Ukrainian people?
So, look, during the war, I started to get a gray beard. But that happened to me during the stress of everything that was going on. But I didn't choose this. Nobody asked me. Nobody led Zelensky under gunfire to become president. He went there himself. On the outside, he's just a squeezed lemon. Everyone sees it. He was once a neat young man, now an old squeezed lemon. Nobody forced him. If he had aged for a great Ukraine, for reforms, prosperity, or avoided war, I'd probably be here with you now just praising him. Good job, sacrificing himself. He deserves a monument, a great man. I always recognize others' success, especially regarding Ukraine, but things are very different there. Milovanov is just a scoundrel. There's a good Ukrainian word for it. He's a villain who works for Soros, who works to destroy minds. To Ukrainian youth who at the Kiev Mohila Academy, at the so-called Kiev School of Economics, is brainwashing, creating incubators of radical leftists who promote the theses of globalists, and all these vile things into Ukraine. He is simply the lowest scoundrel who will soon have to answer for all of this after the war, for everything he has done. He'll never hold those positions in Ukraine again, at minimum. As for Budanov, I don't know who made the decision, but I know that Budanov sees himself as a candidate for president of Ukraine. His sponsors probably consider him one of the top 3 candidates. Sociological research is actively being conducted, and in this sense, Budanov is really being considered. And of course, you need to go personally, lead, and show people. Well, the main intelligence directorate special forces are a powerful thing. I'm not trying to say anything. I talk with the single sign on there. I mean, these are really serious people. But specifically, Budanov here in Ukraine is always involved in politics. You see, here in Ukraine, why does it happen like this? Why is every high position always about big politics? Because people are appointed there based on quotas, on clan representation. They don't choose people because, look, we need reforms or we need the right department to downsize the government, like in America. He may be an odd, unpleasant guy, but he's passionate and knows what he's doing. We appoint him, he works, then leaves. Thanks, goodbye. If he fails, we replace him. That's our policy. Budanov was the head of intelligence for a while, spent every day in the office, made a splash, but got every prediction wrong. He got every prediction wrong. They begin with coffee. In Crimea, rumors say Putin has 4 cancers. Missiles will run out in a week, and Russia will have nothing left to bomb Crimea. Let's have a snack. I won't repeat them. There are about 20 statements all online. This was done by his editor, as they think, and that's okay. I'm just observing from the sidelines. If our people are seriously considering a security service officer for president, then probably everything that's happening is logical.
I'm curious to know, I've already asked you before, why do people look for heroes? Why does there always have to be someone who comes to power, who has certificates, awards, medals, someone who's well known, a tall, broad-shouldered person in a suit with a distinct hairstyle always in the spotlight. So why do we need such a standard? We always need someone who looks standard, what he actually does, what reforms he carries out. People don't react to that as much, but how he looks, how he speaks, that's what matters. I'm glad for them.
These are echoes of the Soviet past. I mean, how it was in the Soviet Union. Yes, I was still in school then. Everyone had to be the same, look the same, not stand out and sit quietly. Well, in short, they wanted to make a herd, and that always bothered me. I always had problems because of it. That's basically how our people choose. That is, if a person gets a high position, he must be an ideal, just a perfect person. You know, like in the Soviet Union, there's no sex. A person doesn't have sex. He's not interested in women if he's a man. In short, he has to be some kind of saint. And that's why in our society, bright personalities, upstarts as they call them, are rejected. They cause a negative reaction. Javier Milei could never have succeeded here. They'd say he's a weirdo with messy hair, a leather jacket, and sweatpants. Yeah, a crazy person. They wouldn't care that he's actually a professor of economics who worked for powerful organizations as an economist and became the president of Argentina. In the end, Trump does his famous dance. Yeah, some kind of crazy guy, you know? And Western society is uninhibited. Look, Halloween was just recently, JD Vance put on that wig and got 30 million views on X. It spread everywhere. It's easier. The most foolish things are often done with a serious face. If you look, especially now, Zelensky is supposedly traveling somewhere along the front, and they're taking pictures and filming videos of him. He has a very serious face, and with it, he'll make many more foolish mistakes for Ukraine. Personally, they can do whatever they want. But for Ukraine, they'll make countless foolish mistakes. That's your answer. And our people, they always look at the person. If they find someone likable on some energetic level and they like him because they see themselves in him, he's likable energetically. No matter what he suggests, like when Poroshenko promoted army, language, faith and gave the country to Soros, well, there's just something about him. He plays a role and they bought it. The little actor, and people fell for it. That's why it's like that. When people vote based on ideas, whether they like them or not, or even if they just like the person, but their ideas help Ukraine, Ukraine will rise. It happens when people choose ideas over individuals.
Most of our viewers are women, so in the future we will rely on women. They will choose not the one they want to marry, but the one who will wisely lead the country. I'd like to address one comment. I was going to save this for later, but since we've brought it up, let's discuss it now. I just want to ask our viewers to subscribe to our channel because 80% of our viewers watch our videos without subscribing. Please subscribe, it would help us a lot. Dear viewers, if you have the opportunity to listen to this text, please leave a comment about it. So a person on YouTube made a video and shared their view of the situation. Someone else leaves a comment. I'd love to see you, Pavlo Sebastianovich, lead National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. You visit us often. As Minister of Finance, Siri Hayday, the political technologist. As head of the President's Office, Arti Hrin. As Minister of Defense, Serhiy Lyubarsky, who lives in America. And as Minister of Foreign Affairs. Well, at least as his advisor, since he doesn't have Ukrainian citizenship, Yuri Tabak, as ambassador or United States consul in Ukraine. Vasyl Burba led BUR with Kirilo Budanov as his deputy for sabotage. Ihor Lapin as the head of the newly created body that will oversee judges. And then this person hopes that decent, honest people will join Ihor Lapin. The person says the number of such people in the Verkhovna Rada should be cut because they're ineffective and don't back up their words. Even without elections, people are questioning this. What do you say to that?
Well, I'll leave Burbu out of this. I can't really say anything bad about him, so let's leave him aside. I won't discuss anyone by name. To the person who writes such a comment, I wish him to have Serhiy Lyubarsky as president in his life so that he could really taste what he's suggesting. This post or comment actually exposes, or rather breaks, another myth. We had a myth. We need a new generation not born in the Soviet Union to truly live, and that generation already exists. I was also born there near the end of the Soviet era. Suppose I don't meet these criteria. There are some really young guys, 25-year-olds even with a Western education. And they work for Soros or for destruction. Well, most often for Soros. There you go. And this is a myth about new faces. So a person listened to different people on the internet and thought that every cook can run the state, as Lenin said. That's all. That's why everything is much more complicated, Tatiana. So the viewer really has to think about it. If they care, if they want to understand, they'll have to make an effort. You can't just blame someone's last name and then accuse them of wrongdoing anymore. Probably everyone will really have to make an effort.
It's not clear how people choose their heroes. For example, consider a situation that affects everyone. The Minister of Social Policy of Ukraine took part in a podcast, and she says that Ukraine lives only thanks to the money we receive from external partners. And we should be very grateful to them for this, but we are not grateful. This has led to the following. This money from Western partners has spoiled our society, and we don't even realize how difficult the situation in Ukraine is right now. Next, the person who will speak about energy is Vitaly Zaichenko. And he says that you want to heat the air in your rooms, in your apartments, to a temperature of 22 degrees. But you don't understand the challenges we're dealing with right now. So put on 2 sweaters. Well, that's the kind of advice people give. But why? Why? Still, do people not shift their focus to others? That's what we hear at the hub, that we're living in luxury, you could say. Instead of being in a warm apartment, we could be in warm sweaters. People still complain about the authorities, yet want to re-elect them. Why?
Too much? Let's take it one question at a time. Regarding the claim that people have been spoiled, Kuchma called it the highest degree of scoundrel. Only a top scoundrel would say people are spoiled. In fact, with aid, donations, and Western help, including ours, we've actually spoiled those in power. Because if they actually faced the war and had to spend the resources they have, then there wouldn't be any room left for corruption. And they would either have to leave power because there would be nothing in it for them, or try to fulfill their duties more or less honestly. That's not happening. These are just the worst scoundrels who, in the light of corruption scandals worth billions of dollars, say things like this. As for the 2 sweaters, it's the same thing. There's no money, but hang in there. As we said in Medved, Russia, no money, so hang in there. Same here. No money, just wear 2 sweaters. So people are nothing. People are nothing. People will always be to blame, and so on. You mentioned Lyubarsky. Someone told me he was in Ukraine again. He spends a lot of time there. He entered Lesilpo, an upscale supermarket in central Kiev. Locals know it. He started filming there, showing what kinds of meat are sold, what kinds of cheese, wine, basically everything is in abundance. And with such condemnation, insulting the people like, what bastards are these? Consuming such products during the war. And in general, during the war, basically everyone should suffer, be in pain. During the war, he compared the situation to Britain in World War II. He could have just as easily compared it to the Tripillion culture. Well, basically, almost all the media space is working for the authorities. There are some lone voices like me, but everyone else works for the authorities, either consciously or unconsciously serving propaganda. The main narrative is that if people are to blame, if people are guilty for the shelling, then everything is immediately clear. I only blame people for one thing, the lack of desire to analyze and choose an idea. That's what I blame them for. Let's see what happens in the next elections. And these ones, let's just say they're simply shifting the responsibility onto people. That's it. It's all about the people. It's scary and frightening what's happening. I'm sorry nothing is changing.
This person is speaking on behalf of Svitry. But I remember that not so long ago, Dmitry Razumkov said that we need to find out how the critical infrastructure facilities were protected. He says, we demand a report and an audit of the funds spent. I follow his updates to see the progress and where the funds go. Who will be held responsible for this when a full audit is conducted? Who will be brought to justice? So far, there are no results. As of November 4th, the result is still 0. So we put on sweaters, and again, it's unclear and unknown who these complaints are directed at. Regarding peace in Ukraine, do you think Trump's rhetoric has changed, or has it remained the same as it was? What was disappointing? Yesterday, he said both leaders should be allowed to fight it out. And also, while giving an interview at the White House, he said that he considers him to be a very strong leader, the Chinese president and the Russian president. What can you say? Does he continue to support Ukraine in peace or not anymore?
He supports peace, not Ukraine or Russia, and feels sorry for Ukrainians suffering from Putin's actions. Trump still supports peace. But I'll get back to Razumkov because you said something important there. Now I'll talk about Trump. I had information in August and mentioned it. Currently, Trump is staying on the sidelines. He's watching. Well, if the Ukrainian people agree to this, if Zelensky wants to keep fueling the war, I'll stand aside. I'll provide some limited intelligence. I'll sell limited weapons to NATO, but overall, I'll stay on the sidelines and watch. Let Putin go through with his offensives. Let them fight if they still want to fight. The United States president has more sympathy for Ukrainians and Russians than their own presidents. So, you see, that's the real situation. Putin doesn't feel sorry for his own people, and Zelensky doesn't feel sorry for his own people either. They're comparing their manhoods. It's personal for them, and Trump is just watching. If we lose Pokrovsk, Trump is basically waiting for Zelensky to call and say, "It's hopeless, let's compromise and save ourselves." I have a question. If Putin takes Pokrovsk and Kupiansk, will the compromise favor Ukraine or Russia? That would strengthen Putin's position, right? If he manages to do it, then the negotiations will be less favorable for Ukraine. No, it's not more favorable than before. They were already discussing the situation, and now they'll point out they're still gaining territory. Trump will say it's in their interest to stop, which honestly is true. That's the situation. That's why Trump is watching. He did everything he could without any harsh measures. He did everything he could. He can't feel worse for Ukrainians than Zelensky does, or be more upset about the enlistment office's lawlessness than Ukrainians themselves. They take measurements. I told you about this. They take measurements. They observe. If people put up with this, well then, guys, I give up. But if you need me, of course, I'll help you. But you have to want it yourselves, just like everyone else. Again, everything, including politics, depends on you. If you want reforms and freedoms in Ukraine, then everyone will help with that, both Trump and not Trump. But if you keep turning our country into a corrupt mess, then no one will help. Trump won't just say, let's help Ukraine no matter what. That won't happen. Similar to Argentina, nobody intervened while leftists ruled. Then Javier Milei came, and suddenly they were like, here, take this, and we'll buy bonds, and we'll make a bunch of investments too. Elon Musk flew over. Visa-free regime for Argentinians. Let's start working on it. If Ukrainians want visa-free travel to the United States or reforms, they need to elect the right president. If they want war, they should choose leaders who promote conflict and say it will last 35 more years. Let me go back to Razumkov for a second. All these statements about needing to investigate, needing to do something, only have power when those who are talking about it actually vote for it in the Verkhovna Rada. But when you make loud statements just to attract voters, and then you vote, not just him, but others too, you vote the way Zelensky wants. That's what Ukrainian politics is all about.
Today, they're saying that the vote was very positive and they won't allow those who teach at higher education institutions and don't have a scientific degree to be sent to the front. Because this was discussed before as well, let's assume that these Ukrainians really want peace. That's true, but as we discussed, people want peace. What will Trump do? Because we see that after the meeting with the president of China, nothing has changed drastically. And today there was a meeting in Beijing. At this meeting, the Prime Minister of Russia and the Prime Minister of China were present. And they say that this meeting was very productive. They exchanged mutual compliments and not in favor of Ukraine because Russia says that part of Taiwan belongs to China and China says it will help defend Russia's sovereignty. They have economic agreements and certain technological innovations. So even if Trump sees that we all really want peace, but Russia has such an ally as China, what will Trump do about that?
Before the Trump-Xi meeting, I told you during our broadcast that Ukraine would be discussed but not widely reported in the press. That's what happened. Trump and Xi discussed Ukraine, and both American and Chinese delegations are talking about Ukraine too. It's just that right now this isn't being made public, but I think in November a lot will change very soon, and a lot of this will make it into the press. Work is underway. Yes, China is an ally of Russia. Multi-step agreements with Trump aim to address this, but we shouldn't wait. Are we expecting someone else to do work we should handle ourselves? You see, of course, we can just sit and hope, and that's what we're all doing now. But just make some kind of deal over there, as long as it ends somehow. That's how everything is happening right now. And there's really nothing to discuss here on a global scale, because most of these agreements will remain outside the public eye. Maybe only the trade ones will be announced. Don't forget that the situation in Venezuela is heating up right now, and so on and so forth. It's all connected.
President Sinzandia Stup, we need to organize a trilateral meeting with Trump, Putin, and Zelensky there so that they can finally agree on peace in Ukraine. Also reminded them that if they don't agree, I'll expose myself. I mean, sanctions for Putin, but Putin isn't in a hurry to go to that meeting with Trump. Only their representatives will attend. Do you think that Ukraine isn't doing enough in this regard? In this regard, searching for the strongest contact, the best contact with the aggressor in order to finally sit down at the negotiating table.
Ukraine shows no diplomacy at all. That is, no, negotiations are being conducted behind closed doors. All of this is happening, but diplomats only do what the person in charge tells them to do. That is the president. You see what I mean? If Zelensky had given them different tasks, then even these kinds of diplomats would probably be able to handle them. But for now, our situation is such that the military wants peace while the diplomats want war. Currently, no one, not even Zelensky's staff, is working. That same Agresko goes on these shows, and Pristaiko actually goes on these shows and talks about how great and wonderful it is to fight. But neither they nor their children are fighting. Their sons, including those of draft age, live abroad. So it's just complete hypocrisy. And once again, all we in Ukraine can do is sympathize. I completely reject this narrative. Regardless of Putin's lawlessness, he has already committed many outrages. We could discuss this for hours. But shouting that we shouldn't negotiate with the enemy because of this is just foolishness. A narrative promoted by propaganda. I'm telling you, it's foolishness. Putin is a dictator who attacked Ukraine, caused us a lot of grief, and we've all suffered from this in one way or another. But you need to understand, America won't end up in Russia's place. Well, I mean geographically, you see. France or Germany won't move there, I think. Russia will always be there, at least as long as it stands. And you just need to look at things sensibly and take that into account. Well, we keep running into the same thing as always. So what will Zelensky go to the elections with, and how will they give up power? That's why they're resisting. They don't want to lose power.
What will they take to the elections? If you pay attention to this situation, those people who, for example, are currently under sanctions, there are people in Ukraine who are under sanctions. Maybe they would like to come to power and change something in this country. And so, well, they are not showing themselves now because they don't have such an opportunity. If they know what needs to be done in the country, they'll go to the elections and could be elected even without support. Or how?
No, that might be a different story. Those sanctions need to be lifted. I don't want to consider them separately in any way. I support removing these sanctions for all and never imposing them on our citizens again. Let anyone interested in politics pursue it. I'm in favor. In general, no restrictions at all. Let anyone who wants to go into politics and run for any president, including all of them. And here I can tell you this. Reuters published a new article saying that there will be no Ukraine in the European Union, including because of the sanctions they imposed, including because of political persecution, and everything else. Even in the case they used against me and my family, everything has been sent where it needs to be. It was delivered personally wherever possible. And my cases are not the only ones. This is a widespread phenomenon, and people in Europe already know about it, and they understand, well, that's not how it works. Even with all their leftist problems, you just can't do that in the countries of the European Union.
Thank you for this meaningful conversation. Please subscribe to the Liberty User Interface channel to support us. We share truth and common sense. We have thought leaders coming to us who know what needs to be done and have something to share with you. Subscribe to Dennis's channel as well. Thank you for being with us. See you next time.
Thank you.